Thank you very much, and nice to meet you all. Good morning. My name is Sayida Goedhoop, and I'm the director of Stichting Nieuw Thuis Rotterdam. And today I was asked to share a little bit with you on my personal intentions, but also on the intentions that we have with Stichting Nieuw Thuis Rotterdam, assisting 200 Syrian families here in the city of Rotterdam in their integration process. So this slide summarizes a little bit on who I am. As you can see, I was born in Suriname, in Paramaribo, with temperatures that are quite similar to as we have today, I guess. And I grew up in the little cheese village Gouda, quite close to Rotterdam. After studying international business administration here in Rotterdam, I started to work with a company called Booz & Company, and I started to work as a strategy consultant. I really enjoyed the work advising companies and organizations on how they could become more effective. But after a couple of years, I was kind of tired of just helping them to improve their bottom line. While there are so many social issues going on, and I figured I could also make an impact on society by using my skills, helping social entrepreneurs, improving their businesses. So that was the moment when instead of starting an MBA or doing an MBA, I decided to explore the opportunities around social entrepreneurship, and I started a small internship with Stichting de Verre Bergen. Stichting de Verre Bergen is a philanthropic foundation here in the city of Rotterdam, a family foundation that invests in social entrepreneurs and in social initiatives that make the city a better place. And I started to work there for 3 months, but actually I never went away, so I'm still with them. And it was there at Stichting de Verre Bergen that I realized that so many people here in the city of Rotterdam and also outside are deprived from opportunities that were so common to me. And I realized that I was actually quite thankful for all those opportunities that got to me. Opportunities to go on exchange, opportunities to do a board position at a student organization, opportunities to travel, opportunities to apply for a really cool, awesome job. But I also realized it was often that those opportunities were there, but it was also quite often that I thought, you know, this is not for me. I cannot do that. I don't have the background. I don't have the network. And it was quite often that someone next to me, either being an informal mentor, a teacher, or a friend, really pushed me and stimulated me and said, you can do this. Why don't you just try? Why don't you just try? And if you fail, you learn something. And it was often because of those moments that I actually took the step and that I actually took the leap and was able to grasp those opportunities. And now in my work today, this is still a central theme. It's both creating the opportunities for people who don't have them at the front door, but also empowering those people to actually take those opportunities and make use of the chances that are created for them. Today I'll dive a little bit more into Stichting Nieuw Thuis Rotterdam and what we do there with refugees that we support. It's quite often, I guess few of you might be familiar with the so-called golden circle. It's quite often that you see what an organization or a company is doing. You see their products, you see their services, they either sell cars or iPhones or whatever, and sometimes you see how they do it. You see that they beautifully design it, you see that they put a lot of love in it, into making the product, but it's not quite often that you see why they actually do it, that you really see the purpose of the organization or the company. And today I want to dive into the purpose on what we do. So to understand a bit about the purpose, we have to go back to end of 2015. I guess all of you are familiar with the pictures I show here. The refugee influx was so high in that year that many cities, many countries were paralyzed, just didn't know how to take action and which direction to take action. And then there was the whole sentiment in society that made this a very sensitive topic as well. It was on a Friday in October that we had a small meeting at the Verre Bergen discussing how to go about this, because we had to take action as a Rotterdam-based philanthropic organization. We just had to do something. And we discovered, we were thinking about the possibility, because of the fact that many refugees were stuck in asylum camps. The numbers were so high that people even were sleeping in sport halls here at Erasmus University. That we said, can't we just buy houses that are for sale for a long time already in Rotterdam and then rent them out to people who got their residence permits? And, well, it seemed like kind of a simple idea. And during that weekend, my colleague and I did some research and looked on funda.nl to see whether there were actually houses available of around 100,000 euros that were for sale for more than a year. And we actually figured out there was quite a segment of houses that were for sale for a long time that people couldn't get rid of. That was 2015. I think today it's relatively different. So we figured, you know, what would be the percentage of houses that we can buy in that segment that wouldn't disturb the market too much, and that would actually make a difference for those people. And Monday morning we had a call again, and we said, well, it seems to be possible. There seem to be houses available. It also seems to be possible as a private party to actually buy those houses and rent them out. And a few weeks later, we decided to go on. We said, well, houses alone, a house is just a starting point of your new life in a new city. So a house alone won't do it. That's why we decided to provide social support to the families in our program to help them with the language. So some facts on the context back then. 2015 was a record year, with almost 60,000 refugees asking for asylum in the Netherlands, compared to around 15,000 in the years before. So you can imagine the capacity in camps wasn't just there, and also the capacity in people helping and assisting those people wasn't there. The procedure of receiving a residence permit, a so-called status, could take up to 18 months. A status holder, so someone with a residence permit, is responsible for his or her own inburgeringstraject, as we call it in Dutch, so naturalization trajectory, and receives a government loan of 10,000 euros to pay for the language course. The status holder can choose a school, however, all the information is provided in Dutch. So that seems a little controversial. In the Netherlands, people have to pass an inburgeringsexamen after 3 years, after they've received their status, and then they receive a permanent residence permit. At that time, only 39% of people passed the inburgeringsexamen within 3 years of time. And after a period of 2 years, only 25% of status holders had a job of more than 8 hours a week. So these facts show a little bit of the challenges that were going on. And that's why we said within Stichting Nieuw Thuis Rotterdam, we want to make a difference for the 200 families that we take into the program, but we also want to research what works well and what doesn't work in order to make a difference for a broader group. Our goal is to make sure that those people feel at home here in the city of Rotterdam, but also that they become self-reliant. And sometimes that's quite a challenge. So, integration. Let's maybe take one step back. Maybe you can close your eyes for a second and think about the city or the place where you were born. What was it like? What were the people like? What was the culture like? How long did you stay there? Then think about the city where you currently live. Is it the same city? Is it a different city? This current city where you live, how do you feel there? Do you feel at home? Do you have people around you who you can turn to? Do you know your way around? And how does this current city where you live differ from the place where you are from? And then think about where we are now. We are now all together here in Rotterdam, in Criterion. And all of us bring their own experience, their own background, their own culture, and their own feelings. And yet we're all together here listening to the same story and probably interested in also the same topic. Integration, you can all open your eyes, by the way, because I see, otherwise I'm afraid you'll stay there in this situation. Integration is quite a complex context, and I'm curious what you think of when you hear the word integration. So this is the moment where you can take out your phone, and please go to the site www.menti.com and use the code 289600. Yeah, the code is 289600. I hope it works. Don't be scared, it's anonymous, so. There we go. So this is really interesting to me. I see quite some terms coming up. The biggest one, diversity, together, importance, refugees, learning, mixing, balance, moeilijk, I see, difficult, meaning in Dutch, inclusion, new, learning, safety, assimilation, culture. We'll wait for another 30 seconds to see what the picture will look like. As this, I think, already shows, is that the concept of integration is quite a wide concept. We all have different meanings attaching to it. What's interesting is I had a lecture this week at for a group of students, IB students at Erasmus University, and I did the same thing. And in the middle of the word cloud, there was a huge word, assimilation. And I was quite surprised, actually, that was the first thing that came up in their mind. As assimilation and integration are quite different concepts. Assimilation is a group trying to, a smaller group trying to adjust to the bigger group and actually giving up his or her own culture, own values to belong to the bigger group. And integration is a two-way process, a two-way street. It means one group opening up for another group and another group also trying to mix in, but it's really a process you go through together. So, a little bit of theory, very briefly. Within our organization, we distinguish two types of integration. Integration has multiple dimensions. So there's the socio-economic integration, starting with a house, with getting to know the language, with having a job or an income to provide for your family. And then there's the social-cultural part of integration, which is equally important. This is emotional integration, having a feeling of belonging, identification. Cultural, so having shared opinions, having shared values, or at least recognizing and being able to talk about the differences you have in opinions or values. Social integration, meaning contact either within your own group as well as inter-ethnic contact. And political integration, having trust in the system and participating. In media, often you see the left side, which is called out. So do people have work? Do they speak the language? But without the social, cultural integration, also the left part would be quite a bit harder. So within our program, I'll just go briefly through this. We focus on housing. We provide 200 houses to 200 families. Actually, this week or last week, we got the 200th family in our program. So we now have around 1,000 people, almost 1,000 people that are participating in our program. We provide language support that I'll go into a little bit deeper, support to find a job, and social support for a period of 3 years, where we help people with both practical issues they cope with, as well as getting to know the neighbors, getting to know their neighborhood, and the entire social, cultural part of integration. I'll just point out a few of the things we do a little bit deeper, so that you can also understand why we do it that way, and that I can tell you a little bit more on our intentions behind that. So housing. Like I mentioned, we bought 200 houses in the city of Rotterdam. I say it like it was very easy, but it actually wasn't. It took quite some effort to do so. Because we wanted to buy houses that were spread all over the city. We didn't want to buy one block or build one block of apartments where people would stay all together, but really mix it across the cities. Then there were some considerations we made on do you furnish the house, for example, or do you put curtains in the house or not? What is people's own choice, and what do you service for as an organization in order to make a smooth transition? And well, we decided, for example, to put in curtains and to put in carpentry to make sure that noise would be limited, to make sure that the house, also from the outside, would look neat and didn't draw extra attention to the people that were already in the building. And well, probably you're all aware of the context back then, but it was quite sensitive. So when we started to move the people in, there were a lot of conversations we also had with the neighbors and with the neighborhoods and with the what we call VVA's, so the owners of the apartments, to explain them why we were doing what we do. And actually, when we had those conversations, we often noticed that resistance that was sometimes there kind of disappeared when people heard the story and heard the intentions, and also when people actually met the families that were moving in. So social support. We see that people in the beginning, when they move into their house, there are quite a lot of practical issues that have to be arranged. So, for example, childcare, subscribing to children in school, tax issues, health insurance, you name it. We have very dedicated coaches that visit the families every week in the beginning. quite intensive, at their houses. And visiting them at house means you're also building trust. You're building a relationship with the families. And it's often quite a balance here, because we have the tendency to, especially in the beginning, to really help those people and to do it for them. But then again, our goal is that people become self-reliant. So it's quite often a balance where you have to push a little bit and make sure that you coach people to do it themselves, and then be there on the background to help when it doesn't work. Then the language. One of the pillars of our program is learning the language. Without speaking Dutch, or the language of the country where you're in, it's quite hard to really feel at home. I often think of one of the travels I made to Argentina. I was sitting at a table with a lot of Spanish-speaking people, and I could kind of follow the conversation and know what they were saying, but every time I wanted to say something or give my contribution, they already moved on to another topic. So I was just like a silent Bob sitting on the table the whole night and thinking, well, this wasn't the best night for me, and I wasn't able to express myself at all and not able to be myself actually at the moment. So I can imagine that a lot of people coming here, although the Netherlands is a country where you can speak English quite easily everywhere, have that feeling from time to time. Like, I could sort of understand what they're saying, but I don't belong to this group yet. I can't express myself. So learning the language is important from that perspective, but also obviously from the perspective of finding work, getting a job. In Holland, people, like I said earlier, have to attain the inburgeringsexamen within 3 years, and that's on the level of finishing primary school. We said, well, we want to push people a little bit to get to the highest level that's possible for them. So for some people, that is B1 level, which you have after you finish a secondary school. And for others that are, for example, illiterate, it might be a lower level, but it might also be a higher level, which just requires a bit more investment and time. That's the investment that we put in from SNTR. Then work or study. What we see now is that the people in our program, some of them are here since 2016, some of them just entered the program, but all of them are really motivated to start working. They want to provide for their own family. And not all of them work at the moment. And even though we have opportunities with companies that say, well, I would like to hire 10 people from your program and just bring them in, we see that people are sometimes hesitant. And this is the situation where I often think back on my study time, having opportunities in front of your nose, but not daring actually to take those opportunities. So what we do with Stichting Nieuw Thuis Rotterdam is that we try to train people in order to increase their self-confidence a little bit. So we train them in how to apply for a job. We train them in how does the Dutch work culture look like, and how can you actually interact with your boss here? What does it mean when your boss gives you really direct feedback, which is quite maybe uncommon in your own culture? So we train people and we create work internships so that they can really experience what it is to work like, and also within their internship practice their Dutch and kind of get rid of the cold feet, so really experience it. I dove into a few of the things that we're doing, and hopefully gave you a little insight on why we're doing it that way. But of course, there are also some challenges that we face within our organization, and this pictures it all. We actually started flying the plane while we still had to build it. And in 2016, we had to develop our products and the services that we wanted to provide to those people. But at the same time, people were already entering the program in the houses. And then at the same time, we started to scale. While we had 20 families in summer 2016, we have 200 families today. So as you can imagine, that brings about quite some challenges. And often I think, you know, should we have studied more before? Should we have written more plans before? But then I think, well, the only way to learn here is really also to involve the people in the program and to make sure that their feedback is incorporated in what we do every day. And with the research that that is conducted on SNTR, we also hope to be able to share the learnings that we encounter in our program with other organizations that are facing these challenges. So when I'm confronted with these challenges, I always go back to my intentions, go back to why did we actually start this and what is our initial goal. Sometimes there are conversations I have to have with people in the program that are not always nice because you have to disappoint people at a certain point in time sometimes. But I go back to, does this help them in becoming more self-reliant? Does this help them in ultimately feeling at home faster? And that's the compass that I use in making those decisions and in having those conversations. So I want to end off here and maybe have a little pitch because we cannot do this by ourselves. We are working hard with all of our fantastic team, but we have to work also with volunteers that can really build relationships with the families that are in our program. So do you want to contribute to our mission? Then please check our website, sntr.nl, where we currently, for example, also need a communication officer, but always are in need of people who want to practice the language and people who want to help our participants with finding a job or writing a CV and things like that. So I would be really happy if some of you got enthusiastic after this story and come to me after this talk. So thanks a lot, and I'm open for any questions that you may have.